"Grandma, I don't feel well. Can I stay home today?" I touched my granddaughter's forehead and felt the warmth spreading under my palm, not burning hot, but enough to keep her home. "Go lie down on the couch, sweetheart. I'll make you some tea." She nodded and shuffled to the living room, wrapping herself in the old Afghan my mother had crocheted 40 years ago. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, watching the blue flame lick the bottom. This apartment had been mine for 32 years. Rent stabilized. Brick walls thick enough that you couldn't hear your neighbors screaming at each other, which in this neighborhood was a blessing. My son used to do his homework at this kitchen table, back when he was 7, 8, 9 years old, before he discovered that charm could open more doors than hard work, before he married Lena. I heard the key in the lock around noon. I was in the bathroom, washing my hands, when the front door opened. My granddaughter was supposed to be sleeping, but she wasn't. She told me later that she'd heard the sound and peeked through the crack in the bedroom door, quiet as a church mouse. She saw my son, Evan, step inside. He moved fast like he had somewhere else to be. He went straight to my coat, the heavy wool one hanging by the door, and slipped something into the pocket. An envelope. Thick, manila, the kind you use for important documents. Then he pulled out his phone and turned his back to the door. My granddaughter heard him whisper, "It's done. Call the police tonight. She won't suspect a thing." He left 30 seconds later, locked the door behind him with the key I'd given him 5 years ago, back when I thought I might fall and need someone to check on me. When my granddaughter told me what she'd seen, I didn't believe her at first. Kids have active imaginations. They mishear things. But she was insistent, and she doesn't lie. Not about important things. I went to the coat and checked the pocket. The envelope was there. Heavy. I opened it carefully, holding it by the edges like it might explode. Inside were 6 pawn tickets, each one for a piece of equipment I'd never seen in my life. 2 laptops, 3 tablets, 1 projector. All from Lincoln High School, where I worked maintenance, where I'd worked for 16 years, fixing boilers and changing locks and making sure the building didn't fall apart around the kids. I didn't touch the tickets. I just stood there, staring at them, feeling my heart pound against my ribs. Then I pulled out my phone and took pictures. Close-ups of each ticket, wide shots of the envelope, timestamps turned on, XIF data intact. I photographed everything exactly as I'd found it, then put it all back in the pocket and zipped the coat shut. My hands were shaking. I called my son. He didn't answer. I called my daughter, who lives 2 towns over, married to a dentist, busy with her own life. "Mom, you're being paranoid," she said when I told her. "Evan wouldn't do something like that. He's doing really well. He just bought that new Audi." I didn't argue. I just hung up and sat at the kitchen table until the light faded outside. Then I called my other son, the one nobody in the family likes to talk about, the one who went to prison 20 years ago for something he didn't do because someone planted evidence in his car and he couldn't prove otherwise. He got out after 8 years when the witness recanted, but by then his life was already destroyed. His name is Jack. I'm Jack too. Jack Sr. and Jack Jr., though nobody calls us that anymore. "Pop," he said when he answered. That's what he calls me. Always has. "I need you to come over," I said. "What happened?" "Evan's trying to frame me." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "I'll be there in an hour." Section 2. The keys. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? My name is Jack Brennan, 58 years old, maintenance supervisor at Lincoln High School. I know every pipe in that building, every breaker box, every corner where the kids think they can vape without getting caught. I've been there 16 years. Before that, I was in the Navy for 6, then worked construction until my knees started giving out. I'm not a smart man. Not book smart, anyway. But I know how things work. I know how to read people. And I know when someone's trying to screw me. I arrived at my mother's apartment that night with a duffel bag. Inside, a spare camera, a notebook, a flashlight, and a bottle of whiskey I didn't plan to open but brought anyway, just in case. My mother showed me the envelope. I photographed it again from different angles, checked the EXIF data on my phone to make sure the timestamp was solid, then made her sit down at the kitchen table. "Who else has a key to this place?" I asked. "Just me," she said, "and Evan. I gave him one years ago for emergencies." "Does his wife have one?" My mother hesitated. She's 83, sharp as a tack, but she hesitates when she doesn't want to say something out loud. "Lena? I don't know. Maybe." They were here for dinner last month, and I saw her looking at the key rack by the door. Lena, event planner, social media influencer, 31 years old and already running a business with 12 employees. She had a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos and a mind like a steel trap. I'd watched her plan their wedding for 8 months, seen the spreadsheets and the Pinterest boards and the color-coded timelines. The venue was a refurbished mill by the river, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, 200 guests, jazz band, open bar. I'd also seen the way she looked at my mother's apartment. This building was prime real estate now. The neighborhood was gentrifying. Coffee shops where there used to be laundromats, yoga studios where there used to be bodegas. Developers were circling like sharks, and rent-stabilized units were the last holdouts. "What do you think they want?" my mother asked. "Your keys," I said, "or your apartment. Maybe both." She looked at me with those tired eyes. "Why would they do this?" "Because they can," I said, "because they think you're too old to fight back." I spent the night on her couch, which was too short and smelled like mothballs. At 6 a.m, I got up, made coffee, and drove to work. Lincoln High smelled like floor wax and teenage desperation. I clocked in at the maintenance office, checked my locker, scanned the day's work orders. 3 broken toilets, 1 jammed exit door, 2 burned-out lights in the auditorium. Normal day, but I pulled the AV inventory log anyway, just to check. 6 items marked transferred 3 weeks ago. No signature, no destination, no paperwork. I took photos of the log with my phone, then walked to the principal's office. Mrs. Delgado was in her mid-40s, hired 2 years ago from a district downstate. She was smart, fair, and didn't tolerate nonsense. I liked her. "Mr. Brennan," she said, looking up from her coffee, "what can I do for you?" "I need to report a discrepancy in the AV inventory." Her smile faded. "What kind of discrepancy?" 6 items listed as transferred 3 weeks ago. No paperwork, no signature. She set down her coffee. "Let me look into it." I nodded, left, and walked back to my office. It wasn't really an office, more like a closet with a desk and a phone. But it had a door that locked, and that was enough. I checked my email. 1 new message, no subject line. The sender address was a string of random numbers and letters. The message said, "We found your mother's stash. Police are coming tonight. Hope you said goodbye." I printed it, filed it in a folder I labeled evidence, and started making calls. The first call was to Jerome. He worked in the municipal records office, owed me a favor from when I fixed his furnace off the books 3 winters ago. "Jerome, I need you to pull some files for me." "What kind of files?" "Building permits, contractor bids, anything tied to 447 Riverside Avenue." That was my mother's building. "Give me a day," he said. The second call was to Tess. She worked part-time as a clerk for the school board and moonlighted as an assistant for a wedding photographer. I'd helped her son get into a plumbing apprenticeship last year, saved him from flipping burgers at McDonald's. "Tess, I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "Wedding photos, raw files, from my son's wedding." She was quiet for a moment. "Jack, I can't just hand those over. That's private property." "Please," I said. I think my son and his wife are trying to frame my mother for theft. Another pause. Let me see what I can do. I hung up and sat there, staring at the cinder block wall. My knees ached, my back ached. I was 58 years old, and I was about to go to war with my own son. But I didn't have a choice. Section 3. The Wedding. 3 days later, Evan sent me a text. Wedding's this Saturday. You're coming, right? I didn't respond. My mother called an hour later. Jack, please, it's his wedding. Be the bigger person. He's trying to put you in jail, I said. I know, but he's still my grandson. Please. I went. The mill was everything Lena had promised. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling. A jazz trio played in the corner. 200 guests in cocktail attire milled around with champagne flutes and tiny appetizers that wouldn't feed a sparrow. I wore my one good suit, bought at Goodwill in 2003, and stood near the back, trying to blend into the exposed brick. Evan spotted me during cocktail hour. He walked over with a champagne flute in one hand and a smile that looked like it hurt. Pop, glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Lena appeared at his elbow like a ghost. She wore a dress that probably cost more than my car. White silk with lace details, hair swept up in some complicated arrangement. Jack, so good to see you. I nodded. She leaned in close, and I could smell her perfume. Something expensive. Can I ask you a favor? Here it comes, I thought. I need your apartment keys. I blinked. Excuse me? Your keys, the ones to your place, for emergencies. You know, in case something happens and we need to check on your mom. The jazz trio played Autumn Leaves. Guests laughed and clinked glasses. Evan sipped his champagne and avoided my eyes. No, I said. Lena's smile froze on her face like someone had hit the pause button. I'm sorry. I said no. Her voice dropped an octave. Jack, this isn't the time or place. Then don't ask. She stepped closer. The officiant was standing 20 feet away with a lapel mic, setting up for the ceremony. I don't know if it caught what happened next, but I think it did. Lena's voice was low and sharp. You selfish bastard. Then she slapped me. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. The jazz trio stopped mid-note. 200 heads turned in unison. My cheek burned. I tasted copper in my mouth. I stood there for a moment, letting everyone see, letting them see her hand still raised, trembling, letting them see Evan's face, white as chalk. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. He answered on the first ring. Jack? Can you come to the mill? Right now. On my way. I hung up. The crowd was silent. Lena's hand was still raised. Evan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. 10 minutes later, the side door opened. An old man shuffled in. Thin as paper, hospital bracelet still on his wrist, yellow from jaundice. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans that hung off him like clothes on a scarecrow. His name was Frank DeMarco. He'd been the super at my mother's building for 40 years. Retired last year when the cancer got too bad to work, stage 4 pancreatic. The doctors gave him 6 months. That was 8 months ago. I'd driven him to chemo twice a week for the last 3 months. He'd saved my mother's life during a boiler failure in 2008, carried her down 4 flights of stairs in the middle of the night when the carbon monoxide alarms went off and the hallways filled with smoke. Everyone in that room knew Frank DeMarco. He shuffled to the microphone. The officiant stepped aside without a word. Frank gripped the stand with both hands and cleared his throat. It sounded like gravel in a drain pipe. I heard there was some trouble here tonight, he said. His voice was weak but steady. I heard someone accuse Jack Brennan of being selfish. The room was silent. Let me tell you about Jack, Frank continued. Winter of 2008. Coldest February on record. Boiler went out in our building. Landlord wouldn't answer the phone. We called, we begged, nothing. Families freezing, kids crying. Old people bundled in blankets. Jack came over with his tools, worked 12 hours straight in the basement, fixed that boiler himself, didn't charge a dime, refused payment, saved 6 families that night, including his own mother. He paused to catch his breath. So, if you think Jack Brennan is selfish, you don't know him at all, and you sure as hell don't deserve him. Then Frank turned and shuffled back toward the door. He looked at me as he passed, nodded once. The room erupted, not in applause, in whispers, in gasps, in that particular kind of silence that follows a public execution. Lena's face went white. Evan grabbed her arm. "Let's go, now." They disappeared into the back hallway. I stayed long enough to hear the sirens. Section 4, the police. The police came to my mother's apartment that night. 2 uniforms, young guys with crew cuts and serious faces, the kind of faces that looked carved out of stone by academy discipline and too many overnight shifts. Their boots squeaked on the linoleum as they stepped into the living room, eyes scanning everything. The family photos on the wall, the wilting fern by the window, the stack of unopened mail on the side table, like the entire place had already confessed something before any of us spoke. "Ma'am, we received a tip about stolen property on the premises." My mother let them in. Her hands trembled just a little, but she held her chin high, the way she always did when life tried to bowl her over. I stood in the corner, with my arms crossed, watching, feeling like an intruder in my own childhood home. That apartment still smelled faintly of lemon oil and laundry detergent, but now there was something else. Fear, maybe, or the anticipation of it. They found the envelope in the coat pocket. It was almost absurd how easily they did it, as if someone had drawn them a map. One officer held the coat up, the other reached in, and the envelope slid out like it had been waiting to be discovered. They handled it carefully, gloved hands, professional movements, like they were performing a ritual they'd practiced 100 times before. They opened it just as carefully. Looked at the pawn tickets inside, 6 of them. Same pawn shop, same date, same handwriting. "Ma'am, do you know anything about these?" the first officer asked. "No," my mother said. "I've never seen them before in my life." The second officer frowned, his jaw tightening. "They were in your coat pocket." "I didn't put them there," she said, voice steady but thin, like a string pulled taut. He looked at me. "And you are?" "Her son, Jack Brennan. I work maintenance at Lincoln High." "You live here?" "No, I came over when I heard about the tip." His eyes narrowed. He was trying to line up the puzzle pieces in his head, and I could already tell he didn't like the picture they were forming. Convenient timing. I pulled out my phone. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head, imagined the disbelief, the suspicion, the need to prove I wasn't the villain in someone else's script. "I took photos of that envelope 3 days ago. Time-stamped. The envelope was already in the coat pocket. I didn't touch it. Didn't move it. Just documented it." I showed him the screen. He didn't take the phone. Too procedural for that. But he leaned close, studied the images, zoomed in, checked the EXIF data, the timestamps, the GPS coordinates embedded in the metadata. He was thorough. I'll give him that. Some cops look for reasons not to believe you. This one was at least looking. "Why didn't you report it immediately?" he asked. "Because I wanted to know who put it there first," I said. "And now I do." The officers exchanged a glance. A silent conversation passed between them. Suspicion, curiosity, maybe even the recognition that this wasn't a clean situation. The first one bagged the envelope as evidence, sealed it, labeled it, all the motions of legality. "We'll need to follow up on this. Don't leave town, either of you." They left. The apartment door clicked shut, then the stairwell door slammed below. The silence after they were gone felt louder than the questions they'd brought with them. My mother sat down at the kitchen table and put her face in her hands. "What happens now?" "Now we find out who made the call," I said, though the truth was I already had a list of suspects, and the top of the list wasn't a stranger. I spent the next week digging. I started with public records. which in this state are actually public if you know how to ask and don't mind sitting in a government building that smells like burnt coffee and lost hope. Jerome, an ex-reporter turned information broker, always 3 questions ahead of whoever talked to him, came through with the building permits and contractor bids. 3 applications filed in the last 6 months for 447 Riverside Avenue. All from the same company, Salerno Construction. Owner, Victor Salerno. I wrote down the name in my notebook. Old habit. Sometimes ink makes things real in a way pixels can't. Victor Salerno, local contractor, specialized in historic renovations, which was the polite way of saying gutting old brick buildings and turning them into overpriced condos for people who used the word artisan unironically. Clean reputation. No complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. Active member of the Rotary Club. Donated to the Hospital Foundation. A picture-perfect citizen wrapped in a suit that cost more than most people's rent. I looked him up online, found his company website, slick and professional, the kind of site that loads fast and steals your trust before you realize it. Photos of finished projects, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood tables that probably cost twice what they looked like they were worth. I called Tess. She answered on the second ring. "Did you get those wedding photos?" I asked. "I did," she said. "But Jack, there's something you need to hear." Her voice had that tone, the one she used when she was about to hand me a truth I wasn't ready to carry. "What?" The photographer uses dual card recording. 1 card for video, 1 for audio backup. The audio caught everything during setup, including Lena rehearsing her vows. My heart started pounding, slow at first, then faster, until I could feel it in my throat. "Send it to me." "Are you sure?" "Send it." That night, I sat in my apartment with headphones on, the cheap kind with worn-out padding that still somehow felt like a confession booth when you wore them. I listened to hours of audio files. Most of it was nothing. Background noise, the jazz trio warming up, silverware clinking, guests arriving like a tide of polite laughter and perfume, the officiant doing mic checks, the florist's assistant complaining about floral foam, a kid asking his mother if weddings always took this long. Then, at minute 43, I heard Lena's voice, clear as glass, calm as someone who had already decided the ending of the story and didn't care who got crushed in the middle. She was standing near the altar, rehearsing her vows under her breath. The hot mic picked it up word for word. "Once we have those keys, everything changes. The building's ours. Victor gets his permits. We flip it in 2 years and clear 6 figures each. Easy money." I played it again and again. After the 3rd time, I stopped hearing the words and started hearing everything underneath them. The greed, the certainty, the betrayal she didn't even bother to hide because she thought no one was listening. Then I saved it to 3 different drives and 1 cloud backup. Not paranoia, insurance. But audio alone wasn't enough. I needed a motive, a map, a chain that linked Lena, Victor, and those pawn tickets. And I needed it before the police decided the easiest story to believe was the one where my mother and I were the villains. So I went deeper. I went to the pawn shop. It was one of those places that pretended to be a jewelry store, but couldn't hide the fact that half its business came from people who had run out of options. The owner, a man named Richie, knew how to read a face before a word was spoken. When I mentioned the tickets, he didn't flinch. "Those came in 2 weeks ago," he said. "Guy had ID, signed the forms, real clean." "Name?" He hesitated, not because he wanted to protect the customer, because he wanted to figure out why I was asking. "I can't give that out without a warrant." "I know," I said. Then I slid a folded photo across the counter. Lena, smiling, holding a champagne flute, the world bending around her like she owned gravity. His eyes flicked down, just once, but it was enough. "Never seen her," he said. "Too fast, too definite. I didn't push it. Not yet." Back outside, I stood on the sidewalk and watched the traffic roll past. The city always looked the same from the street, just movement and noise. But below the surface, things shifted. Alliances, debts, favors. People thought crime was chaos. It wasn't. It was architecture. You just had to find the blueprint. I went to see Jerome again. He had a way of making information feel like something alive, something that crawled through phone lines and paper trails until it found a soft spot in someone's life. "You sure you want to keep pulling at this thread?" he asked, sliding a stack of printouts toward me. "Sometimes that sweater you're unraveling is wrapped around a wolf." "I'm already in it," I said. "Might as well see what's underneath." The printouts were bank filings, corporate shells, rental records. And there it was. Salerno Construction had wired money to a holding company. The same holding company had covered a payment to a woman named Lena Corbett. And Lena? She had filed for a business partnership license 3 months ago. The address listed 447 Riverside Avenue, the condemned building my mother's apartment overlooked. And the pawn tickets? They were for antiques, silver trays, old clocks, things that had belonged to the tenants before relocation. Not stolen at random, stolen with a purpose. Stolen so the tenants could be evicted for criminal activity involving stolen goods. A manufactured crime to clear a building. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. This wasn't just about my mother. It was a system, a machine. And Lena had chosen her role in it. I should have stopped. I should have taken the evidence I had and walked into the police station, let the system do what it was supposed to do. But the system hadn't protected us. It had shown up with a warrant and gloves and a warning not to leave town, so I kept going. The next day, I went to 447 Riverside, boarded windows, padlocked door, but not empty. Someone was inside. I could hear a drill, the hum of a generator. Renovations had already begun before legal clearance was even issued, which meant someone thought the outcome was guaranteed. I knocked. The drilling stopped. Footsteps approached, slow, cautious. The door cracked open and a guy in a paint-splattered hoodie stared out at me. "Site's closed," he said. "I'm looking for Victor." "He's not here." But he was. The guy's jaw twitched. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows the difference between a legal demolition and a rush job." Silence stretched. Then he shut the door. I didn't leave. I walked around the corner, waited, watched. 40 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. Victor got out. Perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect confidence. He unlocked the padlock, went inside. I stayed in the shadows until he came back out, phone to his ear. I couldn't hear every word, but the wind carried enough. "The envelope worked. Cops bought it. We'll move the rest next week. And Lena, tell her to stay quiet until the permit clears." I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I had what I came for. That night, I listened to Lena's voice again. The vows that weren't vows. The confession disguised as a promise. Once we have those keys, everything changes. She was right. Everything was about to change. And I was done documenting. It was time to act. Section 5. The Garage. I started following people, not proud of it, but I didn't see another option. Evan's schedule was predictable. Mornings at the real estate office downtown. Afternoons showing houses to young couples who couldn't afford them. Evenings at home with Lena in their renovated colonial on Elm Street. But twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, he drove to a parking garage on the east side. Same time every week. 3:15 p.m., I followed him there on a Thursday afternoon. The garage was 5 stories, concrete and dim, half empty. I parked on the 3rd level and waited. Evan's Audi pulled in 10 minutes later, silver and spotless. He parked near the stairwell on level 4. A man in a dark jacket approached from the shadows. They talked for maybe 2 minutes. Then the man handed Evan a manila folder. I didn't think. I just moved. I came up behind them fast, phone out, recording. "Evan," He spun around, eyes wide. Pop? What the hell are you doing here? Who's your friend? The other man stepped back, hands up. I don't know you. Jack Brennan, Evan's father. And you are? He didn't answer, just turned and walked fast toward the stairwell, jacket flapping. Evan grabbed my arm. You need to leave, right now. I shook him off. What's in the folder? None of your damn business. I stepped closer. Evan was taller than me, younger, but I'd spent 30 years hauling pipe and wrestling rusted bolts in tight spaces. I wasn't soft. Everything you do became my business the second you tried to frame your grandmother, I said. His face went red. I didn't frame anyone. Then who planted the tickets in her coat? I don't know what you're talking about. The other man was gone, disappeared into the stairwell, but he'd dropped something in his hurry. A laminated badge clipped to a lanyard. I bent down and picked it up. Victor Salerno, Salerno Construction, contractor license, R4472. I held it up. This your guy? Evan's jaw tightened. Give me that. No. He swung at me. Clumsy, desperate, a wide right hook that I saw coming a mile away. I ducked under it and shoved him into the concrete wall. Not hard enough to hurt him, just enough to make a point. Stay away from my mother, I said, and stay away from her building. I left him there, leaning against the wall, breathing hard, walked back to my truck with the badge in my pocket and my phone still recording. My hands were shaking again. Section 6, the locker. The next day, someone broke into my locker at work. Not just jimmied it or twisted the hinges, but cut straight through the lock like it was made of tinfoil. Clean slice, industrial bolt cutters. Someone knew what they were doing, and they weren't worried about being subtle. I came in at 7 in the morning, clocked in like always, grabbed my coffee from the maintenance office, and walked to the locker room. The hallway lights still had that early morning flicker before they warmed up fully. I pushed open the locker room door, expecting the usual. Lukewarm smell of detergent, metal clanks, distant chatter from the cafeteria, and instead saw my locker door hanging open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. The padlock lay on the floor in 2 pieces, the shorn ends cold and sharp. Inside, sitting neatly on top of my spare work shirt, was a flash drive. A cheap black one, nothing distinctive, like the kind you get in bulk for corporate giveaways. But the way it was placed, centered, deliberate, made it feel radioactive. I didn't touch it, not even with my sleeve. I backed away, pulled out my phone, and called the principal immediately. Mrs. Delgado came down with Officer Ramirez, the school resource officer. He was a good guy, ex-Marine, the kind of man who could babysit a classroom or break up a fight with the same calm stare. He took one look at the locker and the destroyed padlock and let out a low whistle. Mr. Brennan, do you know what this is? Mrs. Delgado asked, pointing at the flash drive like it might bite her. No idea, I said. I came in and found my locker like this. Officer Ramirez put on gloves, bagged the flash drive as evidence, sealed the bag, labeled it with a practiced hand. We'll have IT take a look, see what's on it. Until then, don't touch anything else in the locker. 2 hours later, they called me back to the principal's office. I walked in and immediately knew the mood had shifted. The air felt tight. The blinds were half drawn, like they were trying to keep the daylight from getting involved. The IT guy, a kid named Brandon, with a ponytail, a patchy beard, and a Star Wars t-shirt that probably wasn't dress code, had the flash drive plugged into his laptop. He looked like he'd been waiting for someone to ask him to hack into a government mainframe his whole life. There's one folder on here, he said, tapping a few keys, labeled Confess. Mrs. Delgado turned her head slowly toward me, her expression stuck somewhere between concern and accusation. Do you know what that means? No, I said, though the word felt small, swallowed by the room. Brandon clicked the folder open. Inside was a single text file. He opened it. The message read, "We know what you did. Turn yourself in before we turn you in. You have 48 hours. No signature, no names, no details, just threat. Mrs. Delgado's face tightened, lines forming around her mouth like someone had drawn them in with a ruler. "Jack, is there something you need to tell me?" "No," I said, firmer this time. "Someone's trying to set me up. Same person who planted evidence in my mother's apartment. Same pattern." She didn't look convinced. Her job required caution, and I could feel her choosing it over familiarity. "I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending investigation." "For how long?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be useless. "Until we figure out what's going on." I walked out of that building knowing I'd just lost my only source of income and my only leverage. No job meant no access to the school's cameras, no access to the maintenance logs, no keys to anywhere useful. Everything I had built, every routine, every quiet advantage, gone in one-stage threat. I drove home with the radio off, engine humming, thoughts louder than traffic. Every move they made was precise. They weren't just framing me, they were isolating me. First my mother, then my job, then my character. Piece by piece, they were trying to make me irrelevant. That night, I called a meeting. My mother, Jerome, Tess, and Frank DeMarco, who looked worse every time I saw him, like the illness was peeling him layer by layer. But he insisted on coming anyway. Said he'd rather go down swinging than sit at home and wait for morphine. We sat around my mother's kitchen table again. Same spot where the cops had stood. Same overhead light, buzzing a little, casting hard shadows. I laid out everything. The planted pawn tickets, the audio from the wedding, the contractor Victor Salerno, the flash drive, the administrative leave, the ultimatum clock now ticking somewhere I couldn't see. Jerome drummed his fingers on the table, restless energy barely contained. "They're trying to destroy you piece by piece. First your mother, then your job, then your reputation. Classic strategy. Build a narrative around you until people stop questioning it." Tess nodded, eyes sharp. "It's coordinated. No random vandal with bolt cutters does that. Someone's pulling the strings and they're not improvising. They have a timeline." Frank coughed, a wet rattling sound, one hand pressed to his chest. "It's about the building. Has to be. That building's been rent-stabilized since 1974. You lose that protection, the landlord sells, and Victor flips it into condos. Probably worth $2 million after renovation, maybe more if he subdivides and markets it as boutique housing." "So what do we do?" my mother asked. Her voice was quiet, but there was steel under it. She'd been through enough in her life to know when retreat wasn't an option. I looked around the table. These were the only people I trusted, the only ones left who hadn't been scared off, bought off, or burned out. "We fight back," I said, "but we do it smart. No breaking the law. No crossing lines we can't uncross. If they want to use the system against us, we use the system against them." "How?" Tess asked. "They've got money, lawyers, politicians, probably cops in their pocket." "Public records," I said. "They can buy people, but they can't buy the paper trail. Everything they've done, permits, bids, applications, contracts, property transfers, it all got filed somewhere. We find the trail, we follow it, and we make it public, not just in a complaint, in a way they can't bury." Jerome grinned, teeth catching the light. "Now you're talking. We build a case in daylight. We burn them with their own paperwork." "But we need more than a stack of forms," Frank said, voice rough. "People don't care about paperwork. They care about stories, videos, audio, faces. If we want the public to listen, we need something that hits them in the gut, not just in the file cabinet." "I know," I said, "and we have it. Lena's hot mic confession ties her to Victor. Victor's recorded call ties him to the setup. Now we just need to link them to the landlord and to the fake tip that sent the cops to my mother's place." "And the threat at the school?" Tess asked. "That's proof they're escalating. When we go public, we lead with that. Show they're willing to fabricate evidence." Jerome leaned back, tapping his pen against his notebook. All right. Step 1. Gather every document tied to 447 Riverside. Step 2. Trace financial links from Salerno Construction to the landlord and whoever filed the police tip. Step 3. Leak the whole thing where they can't stop it. Press? Frank asked. Better, Jerome said. Internet. Independent news first, then social media. The kind of fire that spreads before they can dump water on it. My mother looked at me, searching my face. And if this doesn't work? I didn't answer right away. I stared at the kitchen window instead. The night outside looked quiet, but I knew better now. Quiet was just the part of the storm you couldn't see. We don't have a choice, I said. They already came for us. Now we go to them. No one argued, and outside, somewhere in the dark, the clock kept ticking. Section 7. The Catwalk. The school held its annual fundraiser the following week. Big event, 200 people in the auditorium, silent auction, bake sale, speeches from the PTA president about supporting our children's future. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I still had my keys. They hadn't asked for them back yet. I came in through the maintenance entrance at the back of the building around 7 p.m. The fundraiser was in full swing. I could hear the murmur of voices, the clink of glasses, someone giving a speech over the PA system. Tess texted me halfway through the event. Someone's in the AV booth. Not supposed to be there. I climbed the back stairs to the catwalk. It ran the length of the auditorium, 40 feet above the stage, narrow metal grating that rattled with every step. The AV booth sat at the far end, behind soundproofed walls, where the tech kids controlled lights and sound for assemblies and plays. The door to the booth was cracked open. I heard voices inside. I crept closer, phone out, recording. 2 people. One was young, maybe 20 years old, wearing a hoodie and jeans. The other was a woman. I couldn't see her face, but I recognized the voice immediately. Lena. Just wipe the logs, she was saying. All of them, November through January. That's 3 months of data, the kid said. I don't care. Do it. What if someone notices? They won't, and if they do, you are never here. I'll make sure of that. I stepped into the doorway. Funny place for a chat. Lena spun around. Her eyes went wide. The kid in the hoodie bolted immediately, shoved past me, and ran onto the catwalk. I went after him. The catwalk shook with every step. The kid was fast, younger, but I knew this building like the back of my hand. I cut left at the T-junction, headed him off near the lighting rig, where the old spotlights hung. He stopped, breathing hard, looking down at the crowd 40 feet below. Don't come any closer. I'm not going to hurt you, I said. I just want to know who paid you. He lunged for the ladder that led down to the stage. I grabbed his backpack and yanked him back. He twisted, trying to break free, and his phone fell out of his pocket. It tumbled through the metal grating, bounced off a lighting fixture, and smashed on the stage below. The crowd gasped, heads turned. Security guards started running toward the stage. The kid gave up, hands up, breathing hard. Okay, I'm done. But before security arrived, I saw what was clipped to his belt. A lanyard. Lena's event planning company logo printed right on it. I held it up for the security cameras, mounted in the corners of the auditorium. Made sure they got a good shot. Section 8. The Arrest. They arrested the kid that night, charged him with trespassing and tampering with school property. He looked even younger, under the fluorescent booking lights. Thin shoulders, patchy stubble, eyes darting like a cornered animal. But he didn't talk. Not to the cops, not to the assistant DA, not to the school board representative who came down pretending to be concerned about campus safety. He just sat in the county lockup with a public defender who clearly had a stack of more urgent cases and told him the one thing every overworked lawyer tells every scared defendant, keep your mouth shut. So he did. I paid his bail 2 days later, $500, which was most of what I had left in my checking account. I didn't do it because I thought he deserved saving. I did it because everything about his silence felt rehearsed, and I needed to know who had given him the script. The kid didn't thank me, didn't even look surprised. He just walked with me to the parking lot, hands in the pockets of a sweatshirt 3 sizes too big, staring at the ground. We sat in my truck, silent except for the tick of the cooling engine. He stared at his hands like he didn't recognize them. "Why'd you do it?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. I let the question hang there, let the silence become something he couldn't hide inside. Finally he spoke. "She paid me $2,000. Said it was just cleaning up some files, no big deal." "Who paid you?" He swallowed. "Lena Brennan." I took a breath, counted to 5 in my head. "My daughter-in-law." He nodded once, small, guilty. "Did my son know about it?" He shook his head. "I don't think so. She ran everything. Told me exactly what to do, when to do it, what to say if I got caught." "What were you supposed to say?" "That I was hired by someone anonymous, that I never met her in person. Just got instructions by email. She said nobody would trace it." She was wrong. I started the engine. "Where do you live?" He gave me an address on the south side, the kind of neighborhood where porches lean and roofs patch themselves with tar paper and hope. I drove him there. No conversation. Just the hum of the engine and the smell of old vinyl. When we pulled up, he got out, head still down, and walked into a sagging triple-decker that looked like it might collapse in the next strong wind. No porch light, no welcome. I waited until the door shut behind him, then pulled out my phone and called Evan. He picked up on the second ring. Voice low, wary. "Dad." "We need to talk," I said. He didn't argue. Maybe he already knew the conversation was coming, just not when. We agreed to meet at a diner off Route 9, one of those 24-hour places with orange booths and waitresses who looked like they'd seen everything twice and stopped judging after the first round. I got there first, ordered black coffee and didn't drink it. Evan showed up 10 minutes later. He looked like a man who had been living on stress and caffeine, dark circles under his eyes, pale skin, hair unwashed, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Maybe he had. He slid into the booth across from me, tried a smile. It failed. "Pop, I swear I didn't know." "Shut up," I said, and the words landed hard enough that he flinched. I leaned forward. "I'm going to ask you one question, and you're going to answer honestly. Did you plant those pawn tickets in your grandmother's coat?" He stared at his coffee cup instead of me. Didn't blink, didn't speak, just held onto the mug like it was keeping him from sliding off the earth. "Evan," his voice was barely there. "Lena told me to." "Why?" "Because—" He stopped. His jaw moved, working through words he didn't want to say. He swallowed hard. "Because she wanted the building. Your mom's building. She's got this whole business plan. Partnership with Victor Salerno. They're going to turn it into boutique apartments for influencers and remote workers, with rooftop yoga and neon signs and all the crap people post online, like it's a personality. High-end finishes, Instagram-worthy interiors, but they needed your mom out first. And you out. You were the only one who'd fight back. So you framed your own grandmother." His voice cracked, and not just from guilt. There was panic now, real fear spreading under his skin. "I didn't think it would go this far. I don't know what I thought, that maybe she'd just move in with you or something. I didn't think they'd actually call the cops. I didn't think—" "You didn't think," I said. Period. He finally looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it, under the mess, under the shame. He was still the kid who used to hand me Legos and think I could fix anything. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I finished my cold coffee, set the cup down slowly. "I'm going to finish what you started." He didn't ask what that meant. Maybe he didn't want to know. I stood, left a few bills on the table, even though the coffee tasted like burnt cardboard, and walked out into the parking lot. The sky was turning orange and purple, like the day couldn't decide whether to end gently or explode. I sat in my truck for a long time, hands on the wheel, replaying everything. Lena's voice, Victor's arrogance, the planted evidence, the flash drive, my son's confession. Every step brought me closer to the truth, but also closer to a line I wasn't sure I could cross without losing something I couldn't get back. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Jerome. Found something. Call me. No punctuation, no details. That meant it was big. I called immediately. He answered on the first ring. Jack, you sitting down? I can be. Good, because this just turned into more than a crooked contractor and a greedy daughter-in-law. Go on. I traced the shell company linked to Salerno. It's not just a holding account. It's a funnel. Money flows in from 3 sources. Salerno, the landlord, and a paisy out of Boston. A political PAC? Yep. And guess who's listed as a donor to that PAC? Lena. Try the district attorney, the one prosecuting your trespassing kid, and the same office that signed off on the warrant for your mother's apartment. For a second, all I heard was my own breathing. Slow, controlled, dangerous. They bought the police, I said. They bought the whole damn process, Jerome replied, and they're about to cash in, unless we burn them first. I closed my eyes, saw the whole diagram in my head. Permits, threats, money, influence, leverage, not chaos, architecture. I'm coming over, I said. Bring a drive, he told me. You're going to want copies. I hung up, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. The sky behind me was almost dark now. The kind of darkness that looks still, but isn't. Some storms don't make noise until they're already overhead, and this one was close. Section 9, the paper trail. Jerome and I met at the VFW bar on Wednesday night. It was mostly empty, just a few old-timers nursing beers and watching the game on a TV mounted in the corner, the kind of flat screen that always seemed a little too bright for the dim room. The smell of old wood, fryer grease, and floor polish hung in the air. A neon sign advertising a beer brand that hadn't been popular since the 90s buzzed softly above the bar. We took a booth in the back, the one with the cracked vinyl seat and a wobbling table leg that had been that way for at least a decade. Jerome came armed, not with weapons, but with paper. He dumped a stack of documents on the table, like a gambler laying down a winning hand. Permits, bids, zoning applications, he said, all tied to 447 Riverside. I flipped through them slowly. 3 separate applications filed over the last 8 months, all from Salerno Construction. The first was a general inquiry about renovation costs, disguised as a preliminary structural feasibility question. The second was a formal bid proposal, thick with legal phrasing and projected contractor rates. The third was a permit application for structural improvements and modernization, which was code for gutting the building and rebuilding it into something unrecognizable. Look at the dates, Jerome said, tapping his finger on the top sheet. I looked. The first application was dated February 14th, Valentine's Day, the same week Evan and Lena got engaged. I remembered the photos they posted online. White tablecloth restaurant, champagne, her ring held up to the camera like a trophy. I remembered thinking the timing felt rushed. Now it made sense. This was planned from the beginning, I said. Jerome nodded. They weren't improvising. They were running a playbook. He pulled out another sheet, a property assessment from the county assessor's office. It listed 2 numbers, the building's current value with rent-stabilized tenants and its estimated value after renovation and conversion to market-rate apartments. The building's current value with rent-stabilized tenants, $850,000, he said. Estimated value after renovation and conversion to market-rate apartments, $2.3 million. I did the math in my head, though I already knew the number. That's a $1.5 million profit. Split between Lena and Victor minus renovation costs, Jerome said. They're probably clearing $600,000 each, maybe more if they inflate labor costs on paper or sell off old fixtures as architectural salvage. What about Evan? Jerome shrugged. Doesn't look like he's listed anywhere. No shell companies, no subcontractor slots, no profit share. Either he's getting paid under the table, or he's just the useful idiot. My guess. He thought he was in the inner circle, but he was just a name they could burn if things went sideways. I gathered up the papers and put them in my bag. Can you make copies of all this? Already did, Jerome said. 3 sets. 1 for you, 1 for me, 1 for my safety deposit box. I shook my head and smiled. You're a good man, Jerome. He cracked open a fresh beer and took a long drink. I'm a pissed-off man. Nobody screws over old ladies on my watch, especially not one who brings me lasagna every Christmas. The next day, Tess called. Her voice was quick, energized, the way it always got when she found something big. I got the rest of the wedding photos, she said, including the ones from before the ceremony. And, I asked, already bracing myself. Lena and Victor were seen talking behind the venue. Twice. The photographer caught them in candid shots. They look pretty cozy. Can you send me those? Already did. Check your email. And Jack, there's no mistaking it. It's not casual conversation. They look like business partners, or something worse. I hung up and opened my laptop, downloaded the photos, 6 images total. In the first one, Lena and Victor stood under a trellis wrapped in white roses, their heads almost touching as they talked. In another, Victor had his hand on her shoulder, in a gesture that didn't match the casual professional pose of a contractor. In the third, she was holding out her phone, showing him something, both of them smiling like thieves who had just picked the perfect lock. I saved them all to my evidence folder, then backed them up to 2 external drives. Then I started building the timeline. Everything I had, organized chronologically. The permit applications, the shell company filings, the property value assessments, phone records I'd obtained through public records request, the pawn tickets, the wedding photos, the audio recording of Lena's vow rehearsal, the flash drive threat, the school incident report, Evan's confession, the audio of Victor outside the renovation site, and the sequence of police involvement. I pinned it all down the way detectives do in old crime movies. Only mine wasn't on a corkboard. It was in a binder, a 3-inch binder, tabs, labels, color-coded sections, every document sourced, every timestamp verified, every claim backed by a primary record or corroborating witness. No guesswork, no speculation, no blurry edges that could get dismissed as conspiracy. Just facts. And when I flipped through the pages, I saw it clearly. The plan began before the engagement. The engagement was part of the plan. The wedding was a celebration of a partnership, not just a marriage. And every escalation, my mother's framing, my locker being broken into, the threat buried in the flash drive, lined up perfectly with each step of the renovation process. Whenever someone pushed back, they escalated. They weren't reacting. They were clearing obstacles. I made 5 copies of the binder, gave 1 to Jerome, 1 to Tess, 1 to Frank, kept 1 for myself, and mailed 1, registered, trackable, to a lawyer I knew from my union days. The kind of lawyer who didn't mind kicking over hornets' nests. Then I waited for the next move, knowing it was coming. Because people like Victor and Lena don't stop. Not when they're close. Not when the money's almost in reach. And they definitely don't stop when they think they're winning, which meant the next hit was already in motion. All I had to do was be ready when it landed. Section 10. The twist. Frank called me on Sunday morning. His voice was so weak I could barely hear him. Jack, I found something. What? Lena's mother. Do you remember her? I frowned, trying to recall. Vaguely. Why? Her name was Patricia Cortez. She lived on Maple Street 15 years ago, owned a small rental property, 2 units, nothing fancy. She tried to get a variance to build a deck on the back, would have added square footage, increased the rent. Okay. You filed a code complaint. The deck would have blocked the fire escape on the second floor. The town denied her variance. She lost money on the project, blamed you for ruining her investment, told everyone in the neighborhood that you'd sabotaged her out of spite. I remembered then. The deck hearing at town hall. Patricia Cortez screaming at me in the parking lot afterward, calling me every name in the book. I'd just been doing my job. The deck was a safety hazard, but she'd taken it personally. Lena was 16 at the time, Frank continued. She was at the hearing, sat in the back row and watched the whole thing. Watched you testify against her mother. Watched her mother lose. My stomach dropped. This whole thing isn't just about money. No, Frank said. It's about revenge. She's been planning this for 15 years. I hung up and sat there, staring at the wall. All of it made sense now. The targeting of my mother, instead of just any rent-stabilized tenant. The public humiliation at the wedding. The calculated destruction of my job and reputation. This wasn't just business, it was personal, and that made it so much worse. I called Evan. He answered on the 4th ring. Pop? Did you know about Lena's mother? Silence. Did you know that Lena's been planning this since she was 16 years old? More silence, then quietly. No, I didn't know. She's been using you, Evan, this whole time. The wedding, the business partnership, all of it. You're not her partner. You're her cover. His voice broke. I don't know what to do. You start by telling the truth, I said. All of it, in writing. Get it notarized. Send it to me. And then what? Then you pray she doesn't take you down with her. I hung up. 2 days later, a FedEx envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a notarized statement from Evan, 3 pages long, detailing everything. The plan to force my mother out of her apartment, the partnership with Victor Salerno, Lena's instructions to plant the pawn tickets, the scheme to get me fired from the school, all of it. I added it to the binder. Section 11, the gala. Victor Salerno's company was hosting a charity gala at the mill. Same venue where Evan and Lena had gotten married. Big donors, city council members, the mayor, local business owners. Black tie event, $500 a plate. Proceeds going to the hospital foundation. The event was heavily promoted. Live streamed on social media. Local news was covering it. I wasn't invited, but I had a plan. I called in a favor with Chuck Morrison, the fire marshal. We'd worked together on school inspections for years. Chuck, I need to do a safety check at the mill on Friday night. What for? Big event. 500 people. I want to make sure the exits are up to code, sprinkler systems working, fire lanes are clear. He sighed. Jack, you're on leave. I know, but I still care about safety, and if something goes wrong at that event, it's going to be a PR nightmare for everyone. He thought about it. Fine, but keep a low profile. I don't want any drama. No drama, I promised. I showed up at 7 p.m. in my work uniform, clipboard in hand, flashlight on my belt. The gala was already underway. String quartet playing Mozart. Waiters circulating with champagne and shrimp cocktail. Victor Salerno, holding court near the bar, looking like $1 million in his tuxedo. I walked through the venue, checking exits, noting fire extinguisher locations, looking professional and official. Nobody questioned me. I was just the maintenance guy. Then I made my way to the AV booth. The tech running the sound and video was a college kid, probably making $50 for the night. I showed him my fire marshal credentials. Need to check the electrical panel behind the booth, safety inspection. Sure, man, go ahead. I stepped inside. The laptop controlling the projector was sitting on the desk, unlocked. I plugged in my flash drive, copied over my presentation file, and set it to autoplay in 30 minutes. Then I left the booth and walked back downstairs. At 8:15 p.m., Victor took the stage. He tapped the microphone, smiled at the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight." The audience applauded. "Before we begin the live auction, I'd like to share a few words about our work in the community." He gestured to the screen behind him. It lit up with the Salerno construction logo. But instead of his prepared presentation, my file started playing. First slide, the wedding photo. Lena slapping me in front of 200 guests. The room went quiet. Second slide, the transcribed audio from Frank's speech. "Let me tell you about Jack Brennan." Third slide, the audio file. Lena's voice clear as day. "Once we have those keys, everything changes." Gasps from the audience. Fourth slide, the timeline. Permit applications dated February through August, cross-referenced with the dates Evan visited my mother's apartment. Fifth slide, the wedding candids. Lena and Victor in close conversation behind the venue. Sixth slide, the public records showing the building's value before and after renovation. Seventh slide, Evan's notarized confession. Victor lunged for the laptop, but it was too late. The damage was done. The live stream had captured everything. People were recording on their phones. The local news camera was still rolling. I didn't say a word, just walked off the stage, unplugged my flash drive, and left through the side exit. Behind me, I heard shouting, chairs scraping, the crowd erupting in chaos. I walked to my truck, got in, and drove away. Section 12. The fallout. By morning, the video had gone viral, 20,000 views on Facebook, picked up by the local news. The mayor's office released a statement saying they were reviewing all permits associated with Salerno construction. Victor's phone went straight to voicemail. Lena deleted all her social media accounts. Evan called me at noon. "Pop, what did you do?" "I told the truth," I said. "You destroyed my marriage." "No, your wife did that when she decided to frame your grandmother." He hung up on me. 3 days later, the city suspended all of Victor's pending permits, pending an ethics investigation. 2 of his biggest clients pulled out of projects. His company's website went dark. Lena filed for divorce. Claimed she'd been coerced, that Evan had masterminded everything, that she was just trying to help her husband's career. Nobody believed her. The school board reinstated me with back pay and a formal apology. My mother's building got a new landlord, a non-profit that specialized in preserving affordable housing. The rent-stabilized tenants weren't going anywhere. Frank DeMarco died 2 weeks after the gala. Peacefully, in his sleep, with his family around him, I spoke at his funeral, told everyone about the boiler incident, about his 40 years of service, about his testimony at the wedding. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Section 13, the end. 3 months later, I was back at work, fixing a jammed door in the science wing, when my phone rang. Evan. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Pop? What do you want?" "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything." I didn't respond. "I know it doesn't mean anything," he continued, "but I needed to say it. You were right, about all of it." "Is that all?" "Yeah, that's all." I hung up. That night I went to my mother's apartment for dinner. She made pot roast, the way she'd made it when I was a kid, with carrots and potatoes and gravy that could fix anything. We ate in comfortable silence. After dinner, we sat in the living room. She turned on the TV, some game show with flashing lights and laughing contestants. "Jack," she said after a while. "Yeah?" "Thank you." I looked at her. 83 years old, sharp as ever, still living in the apartment she'd called home for 32 years. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "Yes, I do." She reached over and squeezed my hand. Outside, the city hummed. Cars honked. Sirens wailed. Life went on. And I sat there with my mother, in the apartment nobody could take from her, in the neighborhood that was still ours, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace.